This is February 18th, 1998. The project is the hidden community of Berkshire County. We're talking today with Reverend Willard Durant in Pittsfield. Okay, so where are you from?
Well, I'm originally from Ansonia, Connecticut, which is about 2 hours from here.
Uh-huh.
You know, so that's where I'm born and raised. I first came to Pittsfield around 1957. That was just coming up from Torrington, Connecticut. I lived there at that time. And some friends of mine I knew just from going up to Pittsfield, we decided to take a ride. Till then, I never heard of Pittsfield.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm from Ansonia, Connecticut. My father was a pastor there. And we had 8 children in the family, you know. And he's always had small churches. And so we were living in Torrington. He was assigned there by the AME Zion Church. And that's where I've come from. Actually, when I first came to Pittsfield, we just came up for a drive, met a few people, found it a nice community. You know, let's go up to the lake. I've never lived in a community that had 2 lakes. You know, we were a very small town, and it was just nice to come up. It's about twice the size of the town I was from, so I thought I was coming to the city. so it was really nice. And I came up and found I liked it, and had another opportunity of coming back again and again. But you know, and in fact, when I finally located the city, I decided that if I ever got married, there's only 2 places I wanted to raise a family. It was Pittsfield or Torrington, Connecticut, which was again much smaller. But since the young woman I met after coming to Pittsfield was born and raised here, you know, it's just saying after living in Connecticut for a year after we married, we got married in 1958, that it was we moved back to Pittsfield and decided to raise a family here.
How old were you when you first came here?
Oh, I think I was 22. 22 when I first came.
And had you already decided to enter the ministry?
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. No. Actually, that was the furthest thing from me. I had no intention of going into the ministry. When I was in the service, I knew that something was in me in reference to that, but I put that off. I thought that was just, you know, something that was a passing thought. But it was only after I married and we had one child that I realized that, in fact, there was a calling on the ministry all my life, and I needed to pursue it. It's strange how it happened, but I was sitting up on West Street, M&J Shoe Shine Power. I was there with a guy by the name of Jim Johnson, who owned it, who I was there for, covering that night for. And I had this dream the night before. It was really troubling me. You know. And I was sitting there by myself then. It was about 8 o'clock at night, just waiting for a chance to close the place. And I had this dream, and the dream was troubling because I saw myself running. It was like I was running but never stopped. And I would stop for a moment to see something and get a run again. And then I come into this old building, and there were stairs going down. As I went down, I saw a big piano. There's an old one sitting there. And the back was out of it. I could look in, and it was like a huge TV screen. You know, and I began to look, and I could see the figures. I knew they were biblical figures, you know. And they were talking, but you couldn't hear anything. It was moving the lips. I had no idea what that was, but I just looked at it, took it, and moved again. I went through the building and noticed everything was cracked and there was happening in the building. And I came out. But for some reason, that dream wouldn't leave me. And that night, I was sitting there, and this guy named Carlton Edmonds, who was from Pittsfield, who was past us. He was about 60 years. He stopped there, and we were talking. And for some reason, I shared him the dream. And he interpreted the dream. He says, let me tell you what I believe what the Spirit is saying to you. And he began to go through about the community being in disarray. The house of God being in place, but yet there was no one working on the building, and none of this. And he said, I really believe that you have a calling in your life to pursue that, and if nothing else, you need to at least take the next step. Just be in prayer about it and do it. So I said, oh yeah, okay. But he went up and he brought me a Bible. I remember it was a Schofield Bible. He went up to the newsstand, it was on top of the road, and came down and said, young man, here. And he gave me that. Okay. And then I began to read more. I've always liked the Bible, but I really got it. So the Schofield Bible is a lot to read. And it's a teacher's Bible. It's really neat. But it was from then, and from that moment on, I knew that I had to begin to pursue as far as pastoring or whatever I was going to do within the ministry. And that's, in fact, that's how it began for me. My father, as I said, had been a pastor for 30-some-odd years in AME Zion Church. But I just never thought that was for me. So I was moving in other directions. I had been active here. After I got married, I got actively involved in the community action when the war on poverty started, when they were trying to bring about change and talking about people being involved in decisions that were affecting their lives. And I was concerned about that because being here and being relatively new to the community, I knew I needed to do something, I knew I was going to raise a family. So I started going around to community meetings, just listening to what people were saying, some of the things that sort of disquieted their spirits when we were talking. And from that, I began to get more involved with the family and children services. Had a couple of social workers in the area who were going down and convening meetings. And one of them was a guy by the name of Bill Ross, who also ran the school committee years ago, won and was on the school committee. He was the first black man to serve on the school committee. But he was doing work in the community at that time. And so I sort of got to know him. And through him, I began to look at community in a different way. I'm just looking at what I was bringing to the community, or what my concerns were, and we began to just share those. And he just began to give me a new perception, on looking at the community and what we can do. And that's really how I got started in any way being active in the community. And that's really how it started for me. But it's never stopped since. It's like there's just something that's in it, each person, and you wait for that moment when someone can show you something. And what it was, I remember once, he was just talking about having visited some of the homes. And he was talking about walking into the particular house of this woman who had a few children and whose place was unkept.
Was this Mr. Ross?
Yeah. He was talking about all this. But what he was saying is that the only indication he could find in that place that there was some hope in this woman as far as really wanted to do something. He looked and he said there was this beautiful plant that she was nurturing, And he said when he saw that, he knew there was hope. That if she was interested in that somehow or another he could reach her, And the amazing thing is that he did. But it's developing that other eye to look at people and things differently than what you first see. You really try to look beyond the surface. And as he shared that, it just seemed to make more sense. And then I began to look at things differently. Whatever I saw, I looked for. I listened for things that weren't being said, looking for things that you really didn't see, but try to look a little deeper than that. See what's there, what's bringing forth, what's causing it. And that's really how it began. That's really how it began. And from that moment on, that's when the Community Action Agency began to come to the forefront, and I was working at General Electric at that time, and getting involved and got on the boards of the Action for Opportunity and trying to get involved and deal with the housing issues and employment problems and other things. But after being involved like that for a year, I finally came out of general electric, told them I needed to leave the Baptist for a year, and began to work for the Community Action Agency, just doing neighborhood organizing and things like that. And from there, was after I began getting involved at that level. Anyway, so that's the way I got started getting involved in things. And it was through that, my involvement there, that I also began to get active as far as the church is concerned. And at that point, there was some movement in this city. Like Reverend Fanny Cooper was involved in getting a new church started. And he wanted to establish an African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church here. And she had come out of the Clinton AME Zion Church in Great Barrington. And she wanted a small church here, and they started getting people together to talk about establishing the church. And since I was from an AME Zion Church in Connecticut, my father pastored, I just got involved with that. And through my involvement there, when the various pastors were here trying to develop the church, I got involved and let them know that I was interested in venturing in getting into the ministry. And in about 6 months or so into that, they have a way where you can come into the whole 4-year course of study, through the nominations. We have a college in Salisbury, North Carolina, and others. And that's really how I came. Now I came through that door. I came through, first of all, just getting a certificate, to in fact to preach. See, that's what it is. And then I was under the tutelage of the pastor, whatever pastors were assigned. In the course of, I guess, about 6 years before I received my first ordination. And then 4 years after that, my second ordination. We have just that. The one is a deacon's orders, and the second one is the elders. But it took me about 12 years to finally receive that final ordination by the elders in the church. And that's how we came up.
So is it sort of like doing an apprenticeship rather than going to seminary and coming out a full-fledged preacher?
Right. Because I sort of had a family, and I wasn't sure, in fact, how I was going to do it. But I also knew that my love at that point in my life was really early childhood education. And I'm not sure why, but I think it's because of my involvement with Community Action Agency and getting involved in Project Head Start, that was really dealing with enrichment learning for kids, trying to get away from the old standard things, and developing that enrichment principles for developing kids. And I began to see things in there that I wanted to get information on. So I made contact with someone at UMASS, and eventually I ended up doing some studies through the School of Education there. And what I had intended to do, in fact, and I had prayed about it, what I really wanted to do, I wanted to continue in that grade, and then serve in any capacity I could as far as the church. But at that moment is when I began to realize what was happening to children, and there were other things we needed to do, and we could do. And so I had a chance to leave here and get involved in the Head Start program at the campus of the University of Massachusetts. And from there is when I really began to further my education. I had taken courses through Springfield College. I had taken some courses here at BCC. But it was only when I got out of here, I went to UMASS and got well, you could call it a fellowship, but I actually got a scholarship to UMASS. That's when I really started the formal education, and moved beyond that. And that's what it was. And from there, things just escalated. You got involved in it. So, and that covered everything, really did.
I wanted to ask you about, you said there was a pastor here named Reverend Fanny Cooper?
Yeah, she wasn't a pastor at that time.
Oh, she wasn't?
Not at that time.
Okay.
At that time, she was a layperson who was attending Clinton AME Zion Church, but up here, and thought that the Pittsfield was large enough for another church to establish another church. And she had gotten hold of the presiding elder from the AME Zion Church, who was stationed in the Albany district. And he came up to take a look at the possibilities. Okay, and they started having meetings. Okay, and that's how I spoke out about, you know. But she wasn't the pastor. There was no AME Zion Church here at that time. She was just, one of the lay people. Okay.
And she remained so.
Oh yeah, no,
and she never became a pastor.
Yeah, she's become a pastor. Matter of fact,
is that right?
She received her first ordination same time I did. I think I was 72, 74, something like that. So that's when she received her ordination as well.
And did she stay in this area?
Oh yeah, she's still in there. She's matter of fact, she lives down on John Street here, but Reverend Fanny Cooper. But she helped get this church started. But she also, I guess about 10 years ago now, started a small mission up in North Adams. And it's getting the same way. Just thinks wanted to see the AME Zion Church just spread, because there's so many needs. And as far as the minority community is concerned, she just knew, that we needed to plant more churches up there. And that's what they do. Yeah, and that's what she does. That's what she's been doing. Very open to whatever that is. But anyway, so that's basically how we got started. But for me, the good thing was that once I went to UMASS and started studying early child education, just how children learn, and then you begin to get a grasp of all the various educational, not only programs, but the very basis of it, the different models they had in early child education that really affected a child and the way they learned. And so you begin to study those to find out, well, what was the impact as far as our community is concerned. And studying that, we found that there are things that really need to change. And so from UMass, when I was at UMass, through the School of Education, we came back to Pittsfield a few times to put on some things at BCC to explore what we were looking at as far as educational models, what was here, what were the other choices for children, and really came back wanted to change it. Wanted to change it because they had the model here at this time that it wasn't Rochelle. She was before. Anyway, so what?
Let me backtrack a little bit and ask you about your early life. So you were raised pretty much in
Ansonia,
right, Connecticut, and you were part of the church where your father was the pastor.
No, he wasn't the pastor of the church.
Oh, he wasn't.
No, he was stationed somewhere else.
Oh,
he lived in Ansonia because he also worked in Ansonia, but he was stationed in Archer Memorial in Hayden Station, which is in Connecticut.
okay.
I had not, until I came to Torrington, my father had never been my pastor.
Oh, I see.
You see, he was my pastor until we got older, and when I moved to Torrington, that was when I went there.
So he then took a church in Torrington.
Right, and by then I'd come out of the service.
Uh-huh.
So when he was coming to Torrington, I said, well, let's go.
What branch of the service were you?
The Air Force.
So you joined up?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to get away. I wanted to see the world, and I thought that was a good way to do it. Like most young men did at that time.
Did you?
Yeah. I did a lot of traveling, I went to Germany, France, and North Africa, in 4 years, And it was really good duty. It was for me, it was really, just opened my eyes to a lot of things.
Like?
Well, wherever you go in life, wherever you go, I found that if you really respect other people and are open, you can get along anywhere, basically. And it's really enjoying other cultures. When I was in Germany and France, I had a chance to go to Paris and go to Verdun, to go to Cologne, Germany, and just to be about, and I just found that there's such an openness that if a person is open to life, then life is open to him. I've just really enjoyed it. But during that time, that's all I was doing. I mean, I wasn't pursuing any other things. I wasn't thinking about, going to college after and using the GI Bill. I hadn't even thought about that. No idea. But that's what that's all it was.
So then you got out when you were 22? And that's when you came up here to visit with some friends?
Yeah, from Torrington, we came up here.
Yeah.
At that point.
And you looked around and it looked nice? Or
it looked, and again, it was really nice. It was a nice, open community. They were doing things here. They had a St. John's Hall, old building that's boarded up now. They had a Masonic Hall, St. John Masonic Hall. And they used to have the hall open, and they were sort of using it. They let the youth use it for a youth center. And so anything, youth dances and all were taking place there. And they would bring in other groups from Albany to come in and put on shows and things there at St. John's Hall. And so I just liked what I thought I saw in this community at that time. That they were trying to respond to the needs of the kids. They had a number of other organizations that worked besides the NAACP. They had a few other groups that were putting on cotillions, for young girls and getting them to come out parties and stuff, and it was just nice. They had the Ebony Club, that was one group that was established here, and we were trying to work with youth and getting them to just develop as far as the whole cultural awareness is concerned. And there are a few others. But they were just adults who were trying to do things here. And I thought it was a lot of possibilities, really. And so when my wife and I did get married, and I said we lived that first year in Connecticut, when she said she'd like to go back to Pittsfield, I was ready, And that's what we did.
What kind of work did you do for GE?
Well, actually, I worked for the load ratio company. It was a part of power transformers. I was a machine operator. That's what I did. One of those third shift things.
So that was 58 when you moved back?
Yeah, it was 58.
When you moved permanently to Pittsfield?
Right. No, 59. 59 when I moved permanently to Pittsfield.
And then somewhere in the early 60s, you mentioned it was about 63 when the war on poverty started.
Yeah.
Was there a lot of poverty here?
Oh. There was a lot. And the fact that was before urban renewal and all that stuff came into play. And I think at that point, about 80%, maybe even higher, of the minority community lived right here on the west side. And there was a lot of poverty here. I'm not sure what percentage worked like at General Electric, but very small. And the ones that were there were primarily working as far as custodians and all concerned. We had a few, actually even in GE, working in another company. E.D. Jones's, that's what he did. But most of them, that's what their jobs were, So it was a time when, you had menial jobs, and that's what we did. We did whatever work we could. And that's what I worked for a while at E.D. Jones's. And then General Electric, and then again, I came right. I knew I wanted to come into the social service field, work with families. And that's, that's when really my whole life began to change. Was working through that and community action agencies and listen to families who are going through a number of things and needed help finding housing or finding jobs. And we began to organize people around what the particular needs were. You know? And that's how those all started. Just happened to be at the place, you know, and time, I guess, where people were just exploring, you know, trying to find out what they could do. You know, I just got involved in it. There was really no magic. And I look back and I'm still not sure how all this happened, you know? But again, I think it's just being open. And when an opportunity was there to move forward, I just did, you know? But I ended up just wanting to, again, just try to see what we could change as far as my own family life was concerned, in our community. And working with them, I just got more and more interested in what is happening and trying to see if we can organize and begin to change some things ourselves. You know.
What kinds of things are you looking to change?
Well, one of the things, when urban renewal came in, they just disrupted the whole community. I mean, at least you had to understand that this was a low-income area, you know. And with all that was going on, you still had a sense of community at the time. Urban renewal really destroyed that. I mean, that whole field, people were being totally uprooted, sent on the other side of town. There were no real plans as far as really enhancing the lives of the individuals here. When they started talking about building houses, they wanted to build the big projects for low-income people. And that was the first issue that we began to fight against. You know, we told them we weren't going. We were not going to accept it. That if they could build something other than project type of housing, you know, then that's what we were interested in. And that's the whole idea of scattered sites and smaller sites were being developed. And that's the way we moved it, you know. And I'm really glad that happened, because I'm sure if they had built those regular project housing like they were every place else, you know, it would really made it much worse for this community. So it was going from there and getting involved in far as education and employment programs, and you know, that's just how it happened for us. You know, just small steps. A lot of little things that took place. And that's really all it was. That's basically all it was. Just a series of small steps. And watching things happen. You know, hopefully making more opportunity for people to get involved, you know, in the decision-making process. And attending council meetings and school committee meetings. And, you know, and that, you know, through the whole process of time, and just being involved from UMASS, working in the School of Education there, and traveling throughout New England, doing workshops and involving parents, you know, parent involvement in the whole Head Start Community Action Program. And that's really where that focus came for me, as far as, you know, really trying to change something in the community. You know, and that's what it was. And that's basically all it is, too, you know. I was able to, from University of Mass, to get involved in the program at Goddard College out of Vermont. See my master's in education through there. And as soon as I did, I came back to Pittsfield to, in fact, work in the community action agencies again. And it was there that we began to work on the area of housing again, helping people to purchase housing and become first-time homeowners. You know? And we did that. You know? So I'm not. That's basically all it was. You know? Through that, you know, there's a lot of good things that happened to me. As far as having opportunities to travel across the country to do some consulting work on involving parents in schools and involving parents in the community, getting them ready, preparing them to get more involved in things in their own communities. And as a result of that, everything happened. But that was basically it. Well, I think the first spark came from Bill Ross.
Okay.
You know,
And was he in church work?
no, he wasn't involved in church work. He was involved. He was on staff at Family and Children's Services.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's it. He was a social worker there.
I see.
But that's basically how it is. But what happened once I got involved in the community action agencies and working on trying to implement new programs as far as housing was concerned. You know, that's what I did for a while. I just worked in the whole field of housing, helping people to find new units, talking to the housing authority, the Pittsfield Redevelopment Authority, when they began to try and find new ways of providing housing for people. Just doing that. Probably again through Head Start. At that point, Head Start and the community action agencies were together, and I had a chance to, through the Head Start program, to get involved outside of this community with war in other places and getting other kinds of training that I was able to, you know, just to move ahead. So I guess the basic thing was the community action agency programs, and that's really how I got started. That's how I would do, at least do the kinds of things that I was interested in doing, and that's where I've been. You know, I look back at my resume sometimes and wonder how all that happened. You know, really. I had a lot of opportunities. You know, going to Washington, D.C., to help them set up the first Head Start, National Head Start Board. I was called to be one of the consultants to go to help them set up, you know, and I did. And another guy by the name of Peter Stein, who lived in Middlefield. The two of us were brought to Washington to help set up the first Head Start Board. It was amazing. It was amazing. Off UMASS, he was at UMASS at the same time. We went off from there. So it's just been involved in a lot of things, you know. We came back and went back to the community action agencies. Again, just continue to work with communities, set up neighborhood organizations, helped to develop neighborhood centers until the Urban Coalition came into existence. And then we worked through the Urban Coalition to find monies at the time when Dr. King was assassinated. Help locate money to set up, you know, neighborhood centers in each of the 3 areas in Pittsfield. They had 3 target areas. One was in the north end, one was on the morning side and west side. And they set up neighborhood centers just to organize people again, and getting them to begin to deal with it, to begin to voice their concerns about what was happening to them as far as education programs. And then through Head Start, began to prepare a lot of single mothers, you know, to get involved, more involved in their kids' lives, and setting up workshops for them. You know, so that's basically how it happened. You know. But as a result of that, I eventually just began to, actually what happened when I went here, I pastored a church in Amherst for a year and a half while I was there. It was AME Zion Church there too. And I pastored solely because of the pastor there was getting his doctorate, and he needed his time off to finish doing his dissertation in. And the bishop at that time found out I was in Amherst, asked me if I would take the church, pastor on assignment for a while, so I did. And so I did that there for a year and a half, and then came back here and continued to do some things to get the church situated. And that's how it worked. And we bought a little place and we had church up here for a while. Until the old synagogue on Linden Street. And that's where we are right now. It's an old synagogue on Linden Street that we purchased and began to, worship out of there. So that's what it is now. But it's been a lot of years now, and I don't know where the time went. I don't know where the time went. It's been good. It's been good for me. So that's good.
What changes did you see occur as a result of the war on poverty and community action? Do you think there were lasting effects?
Well, as far as lasting effects is concerned, I think what the individuals who were involved in that, their whole sense of worth and the value of seeing themselves as productive members of the society then, that they didn't have to wait till the right then, that they could have a voice in what was happening to their children, that they could have an impact as far as what was happening as far as the housing and other things in the area. There are problems back then, like everyone else, with law enforcement and everything else that's related to the low-income and black community. And we really felt that those in power were not sensitive to what the low-income needs were, or that people, that many of them just needed an opportunity to develop whatever kind of skills that their potential, to participate into the community lives. And I saw a lot of changes there. But but it's almost like for the individuals who are getting involved in it, many positive things happened in their lives. But there was no change in the mold itself. You know what I'm saying? It's always the exception. People who are really involved, they would benefit. But they were more or less the exception. But just people normally, there weren't any real big changes that happened. Not a lot. But as a result of that, I guess it's a sense. During that period, there was more sense of community because people were working together. And they were trying to change some things, and some things have changed. As far as even the education, I mean, the various educational models in all of the city, they did change. And they did start getting more involved in the community. But I look at it now, and it almost seems like we're going backwards again. It seems like we're going backwards because instead of really staying involved in the political process, we haven't. We really haven't stayed involved in the political process. You have a few, but there's still a very limited number of people.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think for the most part, I think the community still, really feel isolated from those who were making those decisions. There was a time when people wanted to hear, what the concerns were of individuals. And during that period, there were some monies available to bring about some changes. We tried different things. But it seemed like it was all soft money. There was nothing, no hard monies there where you can apply and go over. It's all short term. Whatever you need to do, then we'll do that. There was no real long-term planning. It's like in any city now. Even here you have planning boards. They look at the whole, they look for a comprehensive plan, that would deal with all aspects of the community and community life. And it just doesn't seem to be there anymore, And I think that's still why so many of our kids, if they do go ahead, and get an education, they continue to move out of the city, continue to leave. I'm just not feeling like, in fact, that they really have a sense of community, that this is their community, and it's just not there. It's just not there. So and we continue. They continue to work. I mean, there are groups now that are trying to make a difference as far as the community is concerned. But it's one struggle after the other. And we just have not solidified as a community. And how to get back to there, I'm not sure. I don't know how we're going to get back to that. Not as far as the political aspects of this concerned. I don't see it happening.
What do you mean political?
Well, I mean staying politically involved in what's happening as far as the schools are concerned, or getting involved and attending city council meetings and voicing their concerns, or even giving ideas or listening to ideas, something we can enhance this community with. It just hasn't come together.
The people aren't doing that.
No, it's basically, I think it's just a lack of real leadership. A lack of real leadership, and it's got to be a base for it. And what happens is that even within the community, in a lot of ways, it sort of continues sort of like to compete with each other more than coming together and saying, no, let's stay together, let's get this thing done. And it seems like one thing after the other happens, we'll try something, sort of. It just doesn't progress. There's not a lot of progress that's being made.
What do you attribute that to? I mean, you said you came here in the late 50s and you were attracted by the community.
Yeah.
And now you're painting,
I think
40 years later, and you're painting a different picture.
Well, it is, but I think part of it had to, the whole sense of a sense of community. What I saw, again, there was a sense of community. People were together, and we say, well, this we'll call it ghetto, But when you have things in common, when the same issues you're dealing with, it's a lot easier to be, to stay organized. But once you start splintering people and sending this one over here and this family over here, you lose that sense of community.
So you're talking about physically moving.
Yeah, physically just moving. Right.
And part of that was the urban renewal?
Mm-hmm. Part of that was urban renewal.
Okay.
That was one thing. The urban renewal, I guess people were expecting more from urban renewal than what really happened as a result of that. Because when you're moving people, you have a chance to really do some miracles in people's lives. Because you're not just dealing with the fact that they're moving into different homes, but you have a chance to look at the other kind of services that ought to be available, to help people begin to deal with the other problems in their lives. But when you're just talking about housing, you do have a better place. But if you don't have the skills, to in fact to advance and get other kinds of jobs, then nothing really changes. Nothing really changes. And I think that's still where we are, basically.
So you're saying that the economic conditions haven't improved?
Not really. Not really. I mean, now understand what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. I'm saying it really hasn't changed to any great extent. I mean, because as far as the number of our youth that still can't find jobs, the number of single-parent families, that is still high. And I don't have a percentage now. I did have it somewhere. So what I'm saying is, things still haven't come together as far as for the minority community is concerned, and we can't point outward to that. Not all of it. We have to look inward as well. It's trying to come together. As we were hoping that even with this church, with the AME Zion Church and Second Congregational Church, and we have another small church, the Church of God in Christ, there were a few times we've tried to come together, not to create one congregation, but just to get one focus. And what happens is that there was such a change of leadership and people coming in and out until it just never solidified. You know? And we even started a neighborhood development corporation that looked like it could move ahead and do some things. And for a while that moved. You know, like they had applied for, through the city, and received a grant to start helping people set up new businesses because we didn't own our own businesses, you know, within the neighborhood. And after about a year of working there, there were like about 12 to 16 small businesses that were started in the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying?
When was this?
This was 3 years ago, yes.
Oh, okay.
3 years ago, and that's when Berkshire Enterprises brought some of their staff, and we hired a couple people to work with them to try and get something started. And it went for a while, but without kind of, well, the initial funds that they received, many of them would take small loans from the bank to try and get businesses started, you know. But without, they just didn't have the expertise or knows expertise available to them to help them maintain their businesses. So a lot of them started, a few of them are still in existence. Like the guy still has a little barber shop up on North Street, and the other one has a shoe repair business over here, you know.
George?
Yeah, not George, no, not George. George has been here. George has been here for a while. He's a good man, Mac. He just opened up on North Street. He told me he's not on Melville Street anymore. He's coming around to the front. But no, this Altman up here, off of, on the upper part of North Street. He has a shoe repair shop there. And the guys right across the street has a barber shop. But there's not, and there are other things that were started. And my wife has started a store for a while. But what I find, it takes a lot of time, and when someone's talking about starting a business, when my wife started that store, and she realized how much time she would have to spend sitting right in that little place waiting for people to come. You know, after about a year, she was tired of that. You know what I'm saying? She was tired of it. And that was doing relatively well. And she didn't lose any money. I mean, she paid up her loan, and someone from New York City heard what she had here, you know, and came down and bought her out.
Oh, yeah.
Really? I mean, she had built up such a connection as far as in the business world for African artifacts and things. They came from New York City, and she sold the whole thing out to them. You know? And we kept a few things for her own, but it's you know, so it was something that it was good if you had it for a second, you know. Like if I was where I am now, where I was retired, you know, I could have run over the store and at least kept it going, but I didn't know I was going to retire. I just decided last when it was time to retire. I was tired, so it was time to retire. But that was it.
But for the community as a whole, there hasn't been much change for economically.
No. Because things aren't, they're still not rooted. You know what I mean? Everything exists at a surface level. You know, and they're more involved in maintaining what we have rather than really rooting it, and put the roots down so the next generation can build on it.
Do you have any thoughts about why that happened?
Well, I think part of it is that we really did not come together and define for ourselves where we were going and where we wanted to be, and then invest in it. You know, you have to invest in it, whatever you have. And I realize that we have I think the minority community makes about 40% of what the normal community makes as far as income is concerned. But we haven't learned to take whatever portion of that we have and use it for seed monies to do other things, you know. We haven't done that. The other thing is that years ago they used to have the old mom and pop stores and all, but you know, that's not even available anymore. You know, you have all kinds of zoning things, those things that you could do in the past, you really can't do now. You know. So it's trying to sort of trying to redefine that, where we're really going, you know. And so it's economically, I don't see any real things happening unless some of our young people are going off uh, to various colleges and universities, unless they came back and decided to set up some type of uh, cooperative effort, you know, to build the community. But like my son came back for a while when he finished Morehouse, and I really wanted him to come back because I knew you need a whole new vision, you know. And if you can get some of these young people to come back and come together, we can do it. We really can. Because I do have more. You know, I don't have a lot, but I have at least a few pieces of real estate where some young people are coming back. I'd like to use that for leverage, you know, to get started. But you need a generation, and I was hoping it could be ours, you know, that can really make that kind of sacrifice. You know, okay, let's get the ground, you know, and then you build on that. You know, but it just never happened. It has not happened. You know. And I'm not sure what it's going to take to do it. You know. You know. But the fact is, I still like this community. I really do. I mean, I still like this community. I don't know if this is somewhere to live. But now I'm looking to my grandchildren. I'm looking at my grandchildren and say, okay, now what can I do? You know. So when they get ready, so that my children can now provide something for your children. Somehow that's what I think it's going to take. Other than that, if you don't have roots in the community, how do you build? You know, you don't. It's almost like you think everything is just on the surface. You know, you're surviving for the moment. Economically, that's all you're doing. That's all. If you look at the other part of our life, as far as the spiritual development is concerned, you know, even that, you know, that in fact have, you know, the Apostle Scripture says, faith without works is dead. You know, you have to take your faith and use it in such a way that others who are looking at can see the benefits of your faith. Not just from me alone, you know, but how has this enhanced the rest of the community? What are other people doing that they weren't doing before? You know what I'm saying? That, you know, to strengthen families, to bring them to a better understanding, to open doors to the other kind of scholarships and all of them that are out there for their children. You know? And you look at it and it's still not there. Is it? You know? And I look at my role in that the same way. You know, I look back on it and say, geez, well, you know, you're a little better off. You know, you're a little better off than you were. You know, but what else? What else has really changed? You know? And I'm not, and I just don't see where a lot of changes taking place. It really hasn't. And I'm not sure what it's going to take to do it. Except a real concerted effort where everybody just stops and says, okay, here's what we're doing. For the next 10 years, we're going to do this. Set some long-range goals. Here's what our goals down here. Nothing else. That's what we're going to concentrate. You know? And then by doing that, being able to really establish a good, firm base by which the next generation can build on. You know?
So were you involved in that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, matter of fact, we got another meeting Friday. You know, we're trying to reestablish the neighborhood organization again as far as that's what we're trying to do now. Because the things that had happened that we thought, that we had hoped, you know, would really enhance the community to move forward. There's so much politics even within our community, you know, so much infighting, you know, until we have to start all over again. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing all over again. You know, trying to reorganize, try to figure out another way of doing it. And who knows? Hopefully, you know, we'll be able to do something next time. You know.
I was wondering about the effect of the general economy on Pittsfield as a whole and the community in particular. My impression is that that the city itself is not doing real well.
Well, it's not. We've missed a number of real great opportunities, you know. But again, it's like downtown development, you know. There are things like even the malls and all. There are times when they want to try to build something within the city itself, and there's so much bickering between those in business who are afraid of new business when coming in. You know what I'm saying? Until it just hasn't happened. We keep. I don't know what. I guess I do. I think I know part of the problem is that somehow or another we've been lulled into this thing that everyone has to agree before you can do something. That's absurd. You can never agree. You'll never get everyone to agree. You know what I'm saying? But if you can just get a nucleus to say, look, if you don't have, let's just begin to build. Let's begin to do it. You know? But I look at it now, you know, I look at downtown, and it's really it's in worse shape now than it's ever been. But you go down South County, look at the changes that's happening. Go to North County, something's happening over there. But here, within the city itself, very little. Very little has been done as far as really, that's really enhancing or developing, that has a root, and that can help us to grow as a community. It's just not there. Now they have I have one person that I think who somehow is able to maintain a vision. And I think if we can latch on to that and join together with him and help him do that, like Peter Lafayette and Berkshire Housing, who now has been given through Doyle. And he's now said, well, even mayor before, at least you really work along with him of developing a whole new plan for downtown. And they're trying to get that off the ground now with Berkshire Housing, Newberry Store, and England Brothers, and all that to try and be developed that. But if you could just get I guess the basic thing, there's a portion of the script that talks about without vision, people perish. You know, and it's trying to create that vision now people can really look at, can believe in, and begin to work toward. You know, but I find it very hard here. I find it very hard to make it happen. But it is being developed now. That's why we want to get that neighborhood, a neighborhood organization up again. Just trying to do it. So it's not the idea of giving up. The idea of seeing more clearly a vision, that also reflects who you are in your dreams and expectations. And that's what's lacking. That's what has to be developed again. And as far as everything else, especially as far as the minority community is concerned, until they in fact have businesses of their own, all monies that come when that dollar comes into the community and doesn't even, it just turns over and goes back out. Until we have some business where that can turn over at least 5 or 6 times before it leaves again, you have a chance to do something, to build, to invest back in your own property, But as long as you don't have businesses, it just comes in and goes right back out. So it's trying to do that again. And hopefully we'll have a chance to see that. But I think it's going to be a long haul. I think it's going to be a long haul. But it's still worth the working for. But it's
I was going to ask you, I've heard your name in connection with the Christian Center.
Oh, yeah. I worked there 15 years after I just retired from there. See, the beauty of the Christian Center for me is the Christian Center, where when my wife and I came on there.
Give me a little background on the Christian Center, since I don't know anything about it.
The Christian Center was set up in 1892.
Oh.
got a long history. And it came into existence because the needs were going unmet in this area. And it was started really out of the mission arm of the First Methodist Church. Epworth Society, out of the First Methodist Church, first started this ministry here. And they came in there, again, just trying to help people with their needs and did a lot of little things. And really they had one man that put 50 years of his life. Burbank? Is it Burbank? I think his name is Burbank. Mm-hmm. Just helping this is volunteer, whatever else he was doing. And building Sunday schools, a lot of them, having the Boy Scout troop started and all that stuff. And he worked on that, of really getting a real good base there. And then every year, they started hiring directors, and they would do some fantastic things here. They had well baby clinics and all of that. Years, even before we got here. At the Christian Center. You know what I'm saying? And they would develop those things right here in the area. And they started servicing families.
The date is March 6, 1998. This is Zed Pine interviewing Reverend Willard Durant in Pittsfield, Massachusetts for the Hidden Community Project of the Berkshire Historical Society. This is tape 2. So I'd like to go over again when you arrived in the Berkshires and what you did after you arrived here, in as much detail as you'd like to say.
Okay. Well, my wife and I were married in 1958. And for the first year, we lived in Ansonia, Connecticut. And the following year, we moved to Pittsfield. And we've been here. We've lived as a family ever since 1959. Again, when I came here, I just moved here because I thought wherever we moved, since this was my wife's hometown, I'd find a job. I had no particular field that I was interested in, just trying to find a job and take care of my family. And we came, and when we did, I decided I wanted to enroll in school here. Initially, I thought that that I wanted to stay. I wanted to learn about sheet metal layout and design. That's what I thought I was interested in at that time. And someone had told me that they had a really good trade school here. Anyway, there's a guy named by the name of Miles Brook, who's really supposed to be one of the top layout design people. Who did special work for, what's E.D. Jones's at that time? I think it's E.D. Jones was in the company. And he was an instructor over at the trade school. So I decided, okay, I'll go there. And then what I did, I took on another job. I was just doing a regular job, working over at the hotel. My wife was, when I come back here, my wife was expecting my first child. And I began to do that. I was going to school during the day, working at night. And that continued, until I finished the trade school again. It was just about 2 years there.
And what were you studying?
I was sheet metal layout.
You did sheet metal layout.
That's what I did. And I found it was interesting and challenging. It was. But again, we had one child. By the time I finished school, my second child was on the way. And I decided that I would not be able to go any further as far as school was concerned. I was going to go to RPI. That's what I thought I was going to do. Ended up not going. Took on a regular job, and I began working at AME Jones's as a machine operator. We then had our second child, and she was born, and that's what I was doing. I remained there just about another 2 years and decided to go into had a job, a chance to get into General Electric. Again, as a machine operator, but primarily a drill operator in ordination. And we were working there. I was working there, my wife was raising the family. And things were going in pretty well. What happened is that when the war on poverty was initiated, they started having meetings in the area, talking about what the needs were of the community. And somehow or another, I was enticed just to go and attend one of those community meetings and began to share concerns, just listen to people. And as a result of that, I got involved in the neighborhood organizations, just meeting them, talk about the problems of housing and employment and all of the things that the low-income areas have been involved in, just trying to get people really involved.
Mm-hmm. What were some of the organizations that you were involved with?
Well, let's see, the organization, well, there's a few. First of all, Action for Opportunity was the primary organization here. That was Pittsfield. That was Pittsfield's Community Action Agency. They had like agencies in South County and as well as North County, each one of them. But the primary focus was getting people involved in all the areas that really affected their lives. That was the whole theme of maximum feasible participation of the poor. That was the focus of getting people involved in education, how decisions were made, how they can influence that. And that was the whole thrust of the OEO programs and the Office of Economic Opportunity that set up the CAP agency. So really that's how I first really got involved. And I served on the board of directors for Action for Opportunity. And that went on until there was a job opening. They were going to hire community organizers. And I decided I wanted to apply for one of the positions. And that was 1966, 67 when I started working for them. And that's what I did. I came into just working in the neighborhood itself, trying to find out what would happen to the families, the kind of agencies that were impacting on their lives, whether it was welfare programs, got involved in working along with the legal aid programs when they were set up, all of them, all the initial programs as far as the war of poverty was concerned.
So was this, you were now working full-time as a community organizer?
Yeah, that was...
Then who were you working?
Action for Opportunity. Okay. I came off the board and became a staff person for Action for Opportunity. And I stayed with them. And we, in fact, helped to set up there were 3 community centers, one in each of the primary areas in Pittsfield. By primary, I remember those who were listed as low-income areas. And in each one of the 3 areas in Pittsfield, we set up a neighborhood center. During that period, when we were first trying to set it up, they were unable to get additional money from OEO. And so what happened is that, I can't even remember what year that Dr. King was assassinated.
68.
Okay. The year when he was assassinated. Again, we were involved in working in the neighborhood at that time. Matter of fact, the assassination happened, and there was a lot of concern in the community, and there were some young people in high school that were very uptight about what had happened as far as Dr. King is concerned. And in fact, and they had said that if the community didn't do something positive, they were going to do something negative. Okay? But that thrust, really what happened as a result of that, they were trying to set up an urban coalition in the city. And that effort was begun, and they're trying to find ways of funding. And the Urban Coalition came out of the efforts of that. Monies were raised through the business community, spearheaded by a man called Larry Stratner, was then the president of Berkshire Life. And he called together a group of businessmen, in the area, and was able to receive commitments from them as far as funding was concerned. And through that vehicle, we were able to fund the neighborhood centers. That's where we had the staff from, to hire a coordinator from each one of those centers, and to begin to work on each level. And they were the reports of action for opportunity. That's how it happened.
Can you describe how that worked, how the neighborhood centers worked out, and what part you played in organizing that and seeing it through?
Well, initially, I was a part of helping to go out to locate the areas where they ought to be placed. And we have one here right on Dewey Avenue on the west side. We had another center set up in the Morningside area on Woodlawn Avenue. And then we had the North End Center that was located right here on Macona Street. And those are the three areas. Each of those centers, what they were attempting to do, they were attempting then, while they're located right there, to really get a pulse on what were the unique problems of that area, but also at the same time, what were the common areas of concern that existed in all the low-income areas, regardless of location, in order to develop a real focus in getting different housing, different housing built for the low income, etc. And that's what the primary concern was then. They were also involved in recruiting families for the Head Start program, making sure that every family in the area would at least have a chance to apply. I don't remember the number of children they had in the programs at that time. And then through them, the Head Start program had a social service component, an educational component, but they also have what they call a parent involvement component, And that was the whole thing, again, of preparing people in the neighborhood to get more involved in their children's lives. And that was really the area. That's what they focused on.
How were the people contacted?
Door to door. Door to door. I remember each of us had to develop a way of doing it. They'd print up a flyer saying, calling for unity in the community, and we go each door, knocking on their doors, and if nobody was there, we'd give them, we'd leave a little brochure, or we just talk with them. Okay? And again, what we were trying to do is get them to come out for the meetings of the neighborhood organization, and from the neighborhood organization, they would elect a representative to go to Action for Opportunity. So we began to really build what we hope to be a real political base for the disadvantaged or the disenfranchised. And that's how it really began. Eventually, I moved from that role into the housing, as a housing specialist. And we began to explore what other kind of programs were out there that they could use to build housing for the low-income community. That's when efforts were made to stop the large high-rise that were in other communities. And we pushed for scattered sites, and to get away from that. And that was successful. We did keep them from doing that as far as the low-income community is concerned. Eventually, they did build housing projects, but not at that level. They built them, little duplex units and all. And developed those in the city. And that's when the Renton projects came into existence.
You mentioned when Dr. King was assassinated, that some of the young people in the neighborhood or in the community wanted to take some direct action.
Right.
Whatever happened with that?
Well, the fact is, a couple of things happened. First of all, after those community centers were set up in each area, from that, we were able to also secure funds to help the youth in the area set up set up programs, and they got involved in setting up and getting mentoring programs and tutoring programs for the kids in the neighborhood. They were focusing, and also a whole thing as far as black awareness is concerned, who we are and all of those things. As a result of that, matter of fact, there were even two plays that day. One was Mirror Black, and the other one was Fables of the Sun People, and that they got the youth involved in. As a matter of fact, the person who wrote both of those plays is still in the area. I just met with him last night about something else.
Who's that?
Ernie West Jr.
And it's called Mirror Black?
Mirror's Black. And I think the second one was Fables of the Sun People. Excellent plays. Did an excellent job with it. And matter of fact, in both of those productions were well received. I'm trying to think where they, I can't remember, was it in Berkshire Theater or something. They in fact had the play. They were really beautiful.
And his name was?
Ernest West.
Ernest
West Jr. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But from that, anyway, a lot of kids got involved, as far as the program is concerned. They also developed, during that same period, it was a little later on, I'm trying to think, but before I left, they developed the African American Society that met right here in the community again. What they did initially, they decided it was going to be all men. That we weren't going to have women involvement, that the men were going to come together and start planning and organizing the community, etc. And they were very effective during that period. And it was going pretty well, I guess for about 2 years. The guy by the name of Al Nolan, he became the head of it. And what they did, in fact, they challenged the Christian Center and said at that time, you're in our neighborhood, yet you don't really have programs designed for us. Okay, and they challenged them. And the Christian Center opened up their downstairs area for them to run programs out of. So they came in and they began to run youth programs out of the Christian Center. They called it the Harambe Room. And that was really, again, that was well received, and that was gone. After that, what has happened? Oh, I had gotten involved again in working with, back to organizing people and making them aware of other kinds of problems.
What year are we in now?
We're about 1970, no, about 1980 probably. I can't really remember. That was 19... Oh my goodness. 1970... Yeah. Right, it was 1969. Because 1969.
Okay.
Again, I had become the assistant director of Action for Opportunity then. And I began working with Head Start families. Okay, with the Head Start staff, working with the Head Start families and getting the information out again and getting more people involved. And as a result of my involvement there, some doors opened up for me. That I was able to get additional kinds of training and organizing through the Head Start programs. And as a result of that, the University of Mass campus in Amherst received a grant to set up a leadership training program for the whole region. And that took from Maine all the way to Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, whole region one, they call it region one. And so I was getting a little frustrated myself here.
Why is that?
Well, one of the things I felt as staff that one of the primary focuses, if you're talking about maximum physical participation of the poor, one of the primary focus there was that in fact we would work ourselves out of jobs. Makes sense. But what we found that as we moved in that direction, that some of the staff were very reluctant to do that. You know, they really didn't see themselves working themselves out of a job. And they really couldn't buy into it. And they, in some ways, they became, I don't want to call them stumbling blocks, you know, but they were just not able to completely give into that concept. And because of that, it sort of kept things from moving forward. When I saw it, that's when I had a chance to move. A job opened up at UMASS, at the training program at UMASS, and I applied for that and received it. And it was through them that I've been given a chance to work as well as having scholarship to attend UMass. And that's what I did. I then left the job here, went to UMass in the School of Education, okay, and began taking courses in early childhood education myself, and being involved with setting up training programs in the region, you know. And so that was my entry into a whole nother level. That's where I began to see things, to understand what was happening in low-income areas, but also to see that there was a way of changing it. And that one of the primary things is to look at the very educational models for early childhood education and how they were being used in order to prepare children. One model, the one they had here was the Burchell model, I think it was called. They had implemented one here for the follow-through program, which is step 2, the Head Start. When the Head Start program, the follow-through came along. And that was to bring what we thought the enrichment principles of Head Start into the regular classrooms. You know, so they had a follow-through program to do it. But they had, I think it was called the Burchell. I'll find out. But that program, they used tokens. The child would earn the token. You know, that's what it was about. And then he would use that. You know. And what happened, from my perspective, is that somehow everything was geared to short range. You know, this whole thing of immediacy, and I thought that was the last thing you needed as far as the low-income families are concerned, because it was too short-sighted. This whole thing of immediate gratification. And I said, well, that's not going to work. But anyway, so when I took the job at University of Mass, I started hearing about other models in early childhood education, like the Montessori approach, and there are others, Peabody's and others, and I began to study those to see what model best fit in to the low-income communities, and to begin to advocate for those changes, you know, like let's get away from the Burchell. And Brighter Engelman was another model. Brighter Engelman, they had things. Well, they believed, you know, if you told this child that this was a cube, if he referred to it as a square, it was incorrect. You know what I mean? Their primary focus of that model was really to prepare youth. A person right now just taken it and decided she was no longer eligible to receive any supplemental help from AFDC, but it's another terminology they use now.
This person that was just called on the phone?
Right.
Yeah.
She called and she's trying to find out if she can get, she wants to apply for other programs so that she can get some help. And, but she also needs food. She needs basic things right now. Because her husband's not in town, like he's out trying to find jobs. Can't find it, you know. So, but she's run out of food. You know, so we're going to make a call and find out what's happening, because I thought that they would move by now to at least get her something for at least for the weekend. That's what we're trying to do now. Anyway, so I'll get back in touch with them. But anyway, so that's how I got involved. That's how we got involved as far as early child education and trying to get programs here in the community. To just give parents an alternative, a choice between, if Burchell is not, what are the other models? You know, so they can see about having those kind of programs here. And stayed involved with that. But I eventually, that's all I was doing, traveling around the region, working with parent groups, and getting them to get more involved in their communities, and then coming back. also, through the School of Education, developed a few workshops and sent them back to BCC, trying to get the parents here to get involved so they can begin to look at another way of doing things, other kind of educational models. And stayed involved there until, I guess that was 2 years. I was at UMASS for 2 years. And I was supposed to finish my education there. I went there, I was going to get, again, in education. My primary focus was going to be in education. But instead of going to early childhood, I decided I wanted to get more involved in administration. Because I thought at that level, I might be able to do some other things that I couldn't do in the classroom. And so that's where I went. And when I moved in that direction, I was working at UMass. I had become now the director of the Comprehensive Early Childhood Program there. And so I took that position. One, it gave me more money than that time. Now I had 4 children.
So that was here, you were director here?
No, at UMass.
Oh, at UMass.
I became the director through the School of Education. They set up what they call a Comprehensive Early Childhood Education Program. And I had become the director of that program at UMass to run sessions throughout New England again.
So where did you commute?
No, what happened, as a matter of fact, I left my family here for the first year. And I commuted until the weather got bad. Then I got an apartment in Northampton. And I would travel back and forth. And then the following year, I moved my family up. Because then I was really involved in things in the emerging.
So you weren't involved with the Pittsfield community at all during those years?
No. I had separated myself for a total of like 2 years. Until what happened, was at the, when I was at UMass, we got involved with designing some training catalogs for all of our programs. And again, what I had done was, I know what it was. I was involved in the Head Start program, and that catalog was coming together, we were doing training. I was looking at other ways to come back to the community. So that's really, now that I thought I knew a little more than I knew then, I was going to come back and do that. And I heard of Goddard College. And they tell me, based on what I was doing at UMass, that if I developed a project that they thought was worthwhile, that they would help me get my master's based on that project. And again, my focus is still the same. So I had designed this project that was called Practical Parent Participation. And that was designed to take the parent from day one and bring them to a whole training program on understanding models in education and et cetera, and all of it, of getting them involved in all those decision-making processes. But it was actually a step-by-step process. By the time I finished writing that, doing my thesis on that, that's how I received my master's. When that was done, that's when I wanted to come back to the community. So what I did, I heard that, in fact, the Action for Opportunity was now looking for a new director.
What is it?
Action for Opportunity. The same one that I had worked with before I left. So I sent them back my resume and told them I'd be interested in returning to the community and work on that. And that's what I did. I sent it back resume and I was hired there. And in 1973, I became the director of Action for Opportunity. And I stayed there from 1973 to 1976. And again, during that period, we were doing some really exciting things. We were helping people to buy individual homes, to rehab them. We helped them to find money that they needed to do it. We even found homes that were going to be knocked down by Berkshire Medical Center when they began to expand during that period. So every house that was there, I went and talked with them so we can go in and strip those homes. We stripped them everything, the lights and everything that was usable, put it in garages, and then worked with families who needed them and gave them that to put in their homes that they were rehabbing. So the process, that's how that whole process began. At the same time, we began to look at ways of documenting more clearly what was happening to people. And so we designed what we call a comprehensive computerized intake referral mechanism. Okay? So anyone coming into the program, whatever their needs were, we'd be able to document it every time we made a referral. All I would have to do is come in the office each day. Okay, and I could just turn on that computer. I could find out how many people were supposed to be followed up that day, who on the staff was supposed to do it, and be able to really document then not only the kinds of services they needed, but people who were still dropping through the gaps, who weren't receiving the service, or who were receiving services, but it wasn't changing anything. It was just perpetuating, you know. It was perpetuating the same kind of things. So that's what we began to focus on. And in fact, right here in Pittsfield, we designed the first, and it was working. Matter of fact, I still have some documentation on it, that we're able to show the community in every ward how many people being served, what those needs were. Again, hoping that if we gave people additional information, that they would design, you know, the system over again, so that people could, in fact, you know, begin to really change their lives and to move forward. And I did that. I worked on that and developed. You know, we went to United Way, talked with the city council, got the city council, in fact, became excited about the possibilities of this happening. So I talked to them about the Tucker School building that was then empty. We moved Action for Opportunity from Wendell Avenue into the neighborhood and set up programs at Tucker School and began to develop what we call the Life Resource Center, that we hope to become a one-stop shopping. So whatever the needs were of a family, once they reached that Life Resource Center, they would have a number of advocates, okay, depending upon their particular need, whether working with the youth or whatever it is, that would then work on their behalf to try and get the program started. In the pilot program was excellent, but at that time, computers were so expensive. We found out what we wanted, that we needed. I think it was like $25,000 for the computer, and in total it was over $50,000, I believe, so minimum, in order to initiate the program and to do what we wanted to do. Couldn't find it anywhere. I found during that period that even the regional Department of Welfare was interested in the computerized program, and we shared with them on what they might be able to do, what the capabilities of it was. One of the primary concerns at that time was confidentiality. I said, no, I want you to have that kind of information on people. You're exposing people to everything. Then now everyone has information. And the fact of the matter is that was in fact a risk. That was a risk. I think it's still a risk as far as that is concerned. So after about a year and a half of trying to get that up, we ran the program out of Tucker School. That went reasonably well. But it wasn't really moving forward. And so after I stayed until 1976, and then I came out. And it was, I had reached a point where I knew I couldn't go any further with it. I thought the idea was good then. I still think it was a good idea, but it really couldn't get it off the ground. So I left Action for Opportunity then, and didn't go anywhere. As a matter of fact, my wife and I, there was a group by the name of Downside Families who were interested in working with youth, working with the youth who were in foster care. And they wanted to set up homes where they could provide parents for the youth. who were in foster care system, who would help them to develop whatever skills they needed as kids. So my wife and I, we took a job doing that. It was right here in Pittsfield. We ran a down-the-side home for boys for about 4 years. And at one time had as many as 16 kids in the home. There were our own 4, okay, and then we had 12 others. The beauty of that system, what I like about WWII, and the reason we took it, because as parents of those children, all the resources that we needed were available to us. You know, if I needed to call an attorney, I could call an attorney. If I needed to call in an educational specialist to help design the education program for kids based on where that child was, you know, we were able to do that. So we did it. We ran that home for 4 years. We ended up adopting ourselves 4 of the children, you know, and the others actually, you know, all of them. I know their lives were enhanced some, but some of them, during the period of time, some things would change at home. Like we have 3 of the children from one family in Springfield. And that mother, when the children were taken, you know, from her, and they ended up in the downside home here, she began to set goals for herself of what she wanted to accomplish, you know, in order to get her children back, you know. And we're in total support of that, you know. And in fact, that in fact happened. It took her a year and a half of going to finding a job, getting an apartment, and the people in Springfield was working with her. And at the end of that time, they did an evaluation and decided she had proven herself. You know, so those 3 children went right back to their mother. You know, so for me, that was a major accomplishment, because it is trying to empower people themselves, but also make sure as you empower them that they have some kind of skill that they can now apply and keep their family units together. And so my wife and I stayed there until I'm looking, I know down here someplace. Oh yeah, 1976 to 1980. That's what we were doing. We ran a house for WWII Incorporated. In 1978, while I was still doing that, they had a New Horizon program. And their primary focus, again, was working with the kids, high school kids, who were having difficulties at home, primarily because they were low-income families again. And what my job, while I was running WWII home, I now had half of it that I could spend working with this group to help kids find jobs and help them tie it into their own educational programs. So that's what we did. We worked with kids, getting them on the job someplace, making sure that the jobs were meaningful to them. At the same time, helping them to learn some basic skills that they need as far as study habits, good study habits, you know, so they could prepare themselves and move ahead. And I did that for 2 years while I was also running WWII home for families. What I done after? Oh, I know. The program was not refunded. The funds were coming from the Berkshire Training and Employment Program to run that program, New Horizon projects. That's what they received. But the next year they decided that they didn't want to fund that program again. So at that point, I applied for the job at the Department of Mental Health and Retardation. You know, and so I moved from there into that department, and I was doing staff development and licensing, helping the subcontractors to find housing in the neighborhood. You remember that was the whole thing then of deinstitutionalization, and I worked there, helping to find homes, making sure that they met basic guidelines, ensuring that there wasn't any saturation in any one area, because you could only build one unit. I forgot, but there was so many hundred feet you couldn't have another one. So they tried to do it. And we helped them set up different ones for mental health and also for mental retardation right right in the city of Pittsfield. And again, the same thing was happening in North County and South County. So we started setting up homes to do that. And I stayed there until 1982. And that's when I heard about the Christian Center. That they were looking for a new director. So I talked with my wife and about doing it as a joint venture. And so I sent a letter to the Christian Center. I understand you're a director. I sent them my resume and my wife's resume and asked if they would consider having a co-directorship. And I think it took about 6 months for them to really decide to go in that direction. And when they did, they came back and offered us the position, myself as the executive director and my wife as program manager. I resigned from the Department of Mental Health, came down to the Christian Center in September of 1982, and it was like a launching pad. I've never seen anything move. I mean, we sort of say that about we think with the joint skills and all that we have. Because my wife did some fine things too. She had done some career development things. She had worked in the Head Start program. So we said, now we told her we thought we could do some celebrating the programs and give them the opportunity. And so when we came in September, we walked in there in September. By December somewhere, we had just being there. You could see we decided, there were still basic needs that were still being food, clothing, and shelter. People still were not receiving this. So many people still. We used to watch kids go by with no coats on, and winter's here, And so what we did, we started setting up a free clothing place. We instituted a free lunch program for families, and we ran that for Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. Because that's all we could afford to do at that point. As soon as we initiated that program, it really began to take off. We had I forgot, I don't remember how many we served the first year. But by the end of that second year, and for every year after that, we served over 10,000 lunches. Every year out of that place. Right? The beauty of that is that the various congregations and from all individuals from the temple, individuals from Catholic schools, in the various churches, as well as the Protestant churches, they all began to support us. They would do food drives, and we would go by and we would receive the food, and we would set up lunch programs. We ran those lunch programs again Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We then began to work with the individual churches who came and formed another group to run the programs every Saturday. And they would come with a full staff. We didn't have to staff it. They would just get people from the churches. They would buy the food, come prepare the food, and serve the food. And we had about 24 different churches and about 6 different organizations. Like we had a group out of Western Mass Electric, who wanted to become a part of it. That became an ongoing part of that program. We come and help set up and home. So that's what we did. By February, that next year, our clothing program was up and running. Individuals, and again, the good thing was that we weren't selling anything. All we were doing was receiving it and putting things on rack, and people could come in and get whatever they needed without any additional cost, because that was part of the problem. A lot of low-income families, if a mother, if she was fortunate enough to buy, she had 4 children, and she might be able to buy 1 or 2 of them new shoes at that time, but she couldn't buy all of the shoes at the same time. So what we decided, let's give some things away. Why not somehow try to free up that money so she could do the kind of thing that she had to do? And we began to provide that for them. And that took off. The beauty about those programs is not only the number of people that are being served and they're able to come in and do it, but the number of volunteers, people from the community, who had come to receive service, now wanted to volunteer. They wanted, to give what they had. We started, and I'm trying to think of how many volunteer hours did we have? It's an incredible number of volunteers. I haven't written down someplace, but it was the volunteer hours itself. I know represented, if they're paying minimum wages, over $80,000. People every day would come there. They would come in and they would go up and set up clothing stores, be there to help people try on things and find the things for the families that they needed. The other ones would come down and set up the dining area and serve the food as people came in. And things just began to mushroom. It really began to move ahead. As a result of that, there are a number of other things that we found out. And we had a social service person who then would begin to do advocacy work for the families. If they had to send them over to welfare or legal service or whatever the services were, they would follow up on that. They would make sure that they received the services. Okay, and make sure things are going all right. So, and that's the level that we were functioning again. As a result of that, we set up a transitional shelter for men right in back of the Christian Center. It's a home that they have there that I guess initially it was going to be like the parsonage sort of thing for the director. But we set up a transitional shelter. And what was happening at that time is that so much was going on in the Christian Center, and that the board felt that if I took on anything else that we were going to burn out. So I said, well, let me work at it. Let me see if I can find someone way to do this. So I went to the Pittsfield Area Council of Churches, told them what we wanted to do, and asked them if they would oversee that program for us if we got it up. You know, believe it, because the Council of Churches, you know, began not only because they helped us with the lunch programs and those kinds of things, but also helped us with the clothing program. We thought if we could get them involved in the transitional shelter, that we could really begin to do some other kinds of things, you know. So we asked them to manage it. We then went and talked to the Red Cross, who decided they would try to find funding for the staff of that shelter. As a transitional shelter, the beauty of the transitional shelter is that the men wouldn't just, when they first came, they had to sit down and make a contract with what their goals were, what they were going to be attempting to do. And that contract would say, okay, you understand, you're not going to be able to stay here during the day. You know, because we felt if we left the doors open, if someone just had a place to go, they would stay there. They wouldn't, so we said, no, you're not going to be able to do that. By 9 o'clock in the morning, after you had your breakfast, you're going to have to be out. You'll either have to be looking at jobs, attending some of the Alcohol Anonymous meetings or whatever, drug related, whatever it is, that they would have to be involved in doing some things to reverse what was happening in their lives. And that's what they did. And what we found during that process, and again, there were 6 bedrooms there, okay, is that, and we gave, I think we established initially that we're going to say it was 90-day or 60-day period they could stay there. Okay. Whatever funds that they made, okay, all we wanted to do was save it so they can get enough to have a security deposit or whatever else is happening. They give them enough time to buy a second-hand car if they were trying to, they had gotten a job, whatever they needed to, just to get them off the ground. And that's what we did. Red Cross did find the money to hire the staff. We were part of hiring them and getting them in place. And that program flowed. We also tied in with the Berkshire Council for Alcohol and Addictions to make sure that those kinds of things were in place. And that program really went well. I don't remember what year now, 1986? 88. 1988. We also heard that there are monies available to build low-income housing for the elderly. And so we talked to the guy at Berkshire Housing, Peter Lafayette, and told him what we wanted to do. We found the money. Now, what was happening is that we had a number of low-income people in the community who were still living in some of the old houses that were very drafty. They're very cold, you know. And what we wanted to do was build some new housing for the elderly, where they would have a chance, at least, to live in some nice units. They would then have the opportunity to turn that over to their family, okay, or whatever they wanted to do with that particular piece of property. What we found over the long run is that the individuals that we were eventually able to help did not own those units anyway. You know, most of them did. most of them they were renting those units. So what we did, as we built those units, there were only 39, that they had first opportunity to move into the elderly housing project. And that really went well. Because now all of them have Section 8. They only have to spend like 25% of whatever their income was to have a first-class unit. And they built it in the neighborhoods, not a neighborhood center, but a center where all of them could get together. So we ended up with a transitional shelter and a shelter and housing for the elderly. And those are the kinds of things we did, you know. And that continued on till 1992. In 1992, the Christian Center began to look at what they were doing and asked me, you know, well, what kinds of things do you think we need to be doing now? And what I wanted to do, when I said, well, I really want an institute. Hello. Hi, Mr. Hamilton. How are you? Okay. So do I. Oh, it was a 100th year anniversary in 1992. Right. Because they started in 1892. It was really fantastic out there. But anyway, so what we decided we're going to do is that we got a special bicentennial committee together to look at the overall goals. And what I was encouraging them to do, I said, look, we're doing all this. The basic things are now being met. And now let's shift. Let's become an agent of change. And let's really begin to look at now the roots of the problems. As long as we're maintaining people as far as giving them and helping them to get their basic needs, now let's move to the next level. And so we sat down with the committee and they designed focus for what we call it focus for the 90s. And it really developed, the primary focus was parental, not parental, what was it, parental involvement again? Parent empowering parents, and something else, I don't have to look it up. But there were 4 primary goals that were established. Primarily, again, what it was is getting parents involved, getting parents educated, so that they again can begin to move forward. Okay. To do that, we began to identify again the same kind of problem. There was still housing, there was still people did not have jobs, and even trying to get jobs, the whole thing of daycare again, what was happening to them. And it's coming back to the same 4 things again. But that was going to be our primary focus. So the Bicentennial Committee developed beautiful brochures, and that's the way we're moving. While moving in that direction, again, when it came right back to look. At some point, this computerized mechanism needs to be in place. Because if we do that, then in fact, we can really help parents. So we moved in that direction again. So we got this, actually I got the city to buy the computer. Now, computers that were costing $25,000. Now they're down to like $3,000. So the city council found the funds for it. So we bought the computer, brought it in, went out then to try and find someone who can develop the program for us based on what we had done what I had done on Action for Opportunity. And could not find a person to really develop. The young man that developed for me when I was at Action for Opportunity was a young man who had quit high school. He was living in Stockbridge. He fed himself by hunting. He wouldn't use a gun. He learned how to use a bow and arrow. His name was Lou Nathanson. This kid, Lou Nathanson, every time you see him, he looked like he just come out of the woods. His hair was long, he had a beard. He was about 5'4", 5'4", always wore hunting boots. But after he had quit school, had heard about computing, had fallen in love with him, and started taking courses. I just thought about him. But he moved west, out west of place, and see him. That kid designed a program that absolutely did everything that we wanted to do. Everything. He designed it from start to finish. Our deal, my deal with him is, okay, listen, you develop a program for us. Okay, yeah, that's your program, that's yours, I'm not. But we're going to have this system. And he did that. So when he left the area, he took all of his things with him, of course, because they're his. So I did have the program, but I didn't have anyone, who could do any follow, could expand the program or nothing. And so I said, well, let me see if we can start all over again. So then what I did, I said, well, let me run back out to BCC. Because that's where we had the terminal from. We had a terminal set up. Yeah, go to BCC. So BCC must have a better setup now. So I went out to BCC again. They said, sorry, we can't do that. We don't have the capacity to have terminals anymore. So I said, well, can you take this? Can you design this for us so we can get the software to put into our new computer? They said, no, you can't do that. So I contact people in North Adams State, asking them, listen, here's what we've done before. If we did it then, this is like 10 years before, surely we can have the capacity to do it now. They couldn't do it for us. Now I'm trying to get money to hire a person who will write the programs. Well, I couldn't get the board to move in that direction. The kinds of things they wanted the computer to do. And I understand it. Was primarily the whole thing about fundraising. To be able to get all that, because we had developed a large mailing list as far as people support. And what they wanted to do, really, was to use that now to ensure that the funds kept coming in. And so the time that they did find me a person, sit down and write all the things from mailing lists of sending things out. I could categorize the individuals that were contributing us in all kind of categories. You know what I'm saying? If I want to find out their interests, if I knew where they were working, it was in the computer, so we can do that kind of thing. But that all came back to primarily the fundraising. Now, I really wasn't interested in fundraising. I know we have to do it. I know we have to do fundraising, and we were doing it. I mean, when I arrived at the Christian Center, I think they were receiving about $15,000. I think it was $15,000 a year, what they were receiving in fundraising. Every year, after I think the following year, we've gone up to $25,000. The year after that, it kept going from 26 to 28,000. By the end of the first 5-year period, I think we were averaging about $50,000 a year. By the time we left, we were averaging $76,000 a year. Again, money was not going towards staff. Money was going to the program. But there was just so much, I guess, over a period of time, they just felt that was too much money that was being spent. And that the Christian Center was starting to go in the hole. They had to begin to take money from their endowments to support some of the programs. And they decided they want to find another way of doing it. And so that's where we were. That's where we were, and that's what I was doing all that period. Until 97, when I decided, well, it was enough. It was enough for me anyway. And so we came out of it. Looking back on it, a lot of good came out of it, as far as people being served. And they're still being served. But the fact is, there's still not anything really changing in their lives. Now, I don't mean that, some people have, I'm sure their lives have been enhanced. But I'm talking about as far as changing the system so the next generation wouldn't have to go through the same thing. It's not there. It's the same thing. You still have the low-income families going through exactly the same thing. They have to run in 15 different places to tell their poverty over and over again in order to get services. Once they receive services, often the requirements on them of what they have to do in order to maintain it is such that they're almost overwhelmed. They reach a place where they're just giving up. It seems like everyone else is making decisions for their families instead of them. And it's just continued to erode. There's no real families themselves are not really being strengthened, not too low income, you know, and that's where we are. That's right. You know, I'm still trying to find out what will make the difference, you know, what really can make the difference here. And that's where we are. That's where I am anyway. Now I understand we are, that's where I am.
So what have you been doing since you resigned?
Well, what I've been doing, first of all, is, first thing I had to do was go through a major adjustment.
Also,
Well, the fact of the matter is, that's a ministry. You know, that really is
Christian
a ministry.
center.
The Christian Center really is a ministry. And while I was there, I was doing a lot of ongoing counseling of people, doing some marriage counseling as well, helping, you know, to sort of strengthen families and work with them. When you go through that for that period of time and you come out of it, it's almost like there's a vacuum that's created in your life. You know, it's almost a sense of being overwhelmed. It's like all of a sudden that's what it was a vacuum. Almost nothing was there, you know. It was an emptying, you know, and I was just trying to figure out, okay, where do I want to go now? And what I decided to do, I want to go back to the church, where the church I was concentrating on, you know, just having everything our churches run, or having our programs and our Sunday schools there. But what I want to see, I want to do something different. I want to see if I can do what we wanted to do at the center for kids, and see if I can do it through the church, you know. And that's where we're moving. And now we want to see about setting up programs.
what church is this?
Well, I'm at Price Memorial.
Price?
Price Memorial. It's the AME Zion Church. And I've been with them since 1973. Even while I was doing that, I was always,
Did you serve as pastor there?
yeah, still do.
Okay.
All this time.
All this time.
All this time. And what I had thought, well, here's how naive I was, I guess. What I had done is, since my church is located 2 doors down from the Christian Center. You know, so I said, well, we can basically do.
This is tape 3 of the interview with Reverend Willard Durant. The date is March 6, 1998. We're in Pittsfield, and continuing the interview.
Okay. Where was that? I don't know what I'm talking about.
You were talking about the Christian Center and your church were next to each other.
So what we had done is that some members of my church had come onto the Christian Center board. Okay. And actually, they provided a lot for me during that period of setting up those programs, you know, getting those programs off the ground. And so what I thought, and in the early stages, a lot of good things happened as a result of that. Because even when we were trying to set up a neighborhood development corporation, they were there and involved in helping us set that up. And what we had done is just trying to keep that balance. But there was a place where there was a conflict that involved. Because the Christian Center, because programs had grew so fast, just demanded more and more time. You know? So much so until often my church, other than seeing me in our meetings and on Sundays and going to various places on behalf of the church, actually began to feel that, well, you're really the pastor for the community center. I mean, for the Christian Center. And I was executive director, but that sense, where it was almost like a conflict between the two. I had to figure out how I was going to continue to do that time. You know? And I find that, well, I guess the word says it better than anything else. It says a man can't serve 2 masters. You know what I'm saying? And looking back on it, when I thought there was a marriage, there really wasn't a marriage. People were there supporting me and what we were trying to do. And because it had happened. But in many ways, they ended up probably sacrificing more than I did. You know, because I in fact was doing those kinds of things I wanted to do, and the kinds of things that I could have been putting more time in as far as the church was concerned, and ministering more specifically, precisely to those families, I was giving to the families in the Christian Center. You know? So when I came out, and when I finally said I was retired, well, I said, wait, maybe not. Maybe I can concentrate now on the church and the church families and get that off the ground. You know, really get it off the ground. And that's what we're doing. That's exactly what we're trying to do now. What's happening with that is that as I move back to do that, I find my parishioners are seeing a different pastor. You know what I mean? And they're not sure if that's the direction they want to go. Because it's like so many churches. We end up with a small group of people who are more concerned about their church building and things than they are with how they serve in the community that we're in, if that's our focus. If our focus is to serve the community, then I'm all for fellowship, but I think fellowship needs to be there. You know what I'm saying? We can't just come together and enjoy each other. You know, and though we might be receiving all kinds of blessings and God is blessing us, our call isn't to do that. Our call is beyond the fellowship, is fellowship. He still's calling us to do the same thing. He's feeding the hungry, you know, those who are naked, being father to the fatherless and all that. If you look at the end of all of those, they represent some kind of programs or things to serve those people that now must be in place. So what I want to do in the church now, in some ways reflects what the Christian Center will do in the Christian Center. But now I want to move to another level. As a church, my primary focus is going to be, and must be, serving, first of all, the membership of that church. The secondary focus is the rest of the minority community. Because that's who our church is. It's not limited to them. I mean, we have a couple of white pastors. Matter of fact, one of them serves our church in Great Barrington, you know. And we do have some individuals from the community that are not minorities. But the fact is, you've got to bring those people together. They have to solidify as one congregation. And I'm finding it very difficult, you know, at this point to make that happen. So what we're doing, we're pulling back and looking at pieces of it. And what we're looking at is, again, starting to work with the youth. We had other programs that we had done in the past, like tutoring and mentoring. We want to do that. We talked about initiating a rites to passage program. And that is, you know, involving kids. And I think they said they want to start from like 10, continue on, 14 or 16. And the rites of passage program is designed to, in fact, first of all, it's a whole historical thing of helping us to realize from which we've come. Okay? But the second thing is, you know, the principles of Kwanzaa, which is that whole celebration that starts in January, December 26th, and runs for a week. It emphasizes things like economics, unity, cooperation. But it's the basic principles of Kwanzaa. But what it does, it establishes within each child that goes through it, you know, not only a sense of family, but also a sense of community and what it really means. And it helps them to develop some basic characteristics to become a real functioning, independent but productive human being. But it's looking at them individually first before they come into the community. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what it is. It's a rites of passage of helping them to look at where they're going as far as maturity is concerned, what's going to be required of them in order to function at that level in the community, looking at where they are educationally, now, so we can help them to get to where they need to go. Whether if they're going into college, that's what we hope they're going, and then prepare them for that. Because right now, we've had a sharp drop in the number of minorities going into college. I mean, it's almost falling off the board. In Pittsfield, we have a 51% dropout rate of our kids. And now with the whole thing of drugs and the pattern of drugs coming into the community, and what it's doing with families, the number of single-parent households, it's absolutely going out of sight now. And what we're doing now is to see, what can we put together? How can we begin to change this? And that's where we are. At the same time, when that's happening, we're talking about building a brand new jail. That's not going to help us. It's not going to help us again, not at all. As a matter of fact, it's already hurt this community, just when we look at the number of individuals that are being incarcerated now, some from the community, but so many of them aren't from this community. They came from whatever, Springfield, Albany, whatever, they come in and sell drugs. Once they become incarcerated, they're incarcerated here, their families move up to the city, okay? Now at the same time, if we have programs in place to work with those families while that person is incarcerated, and then someone within the House of Correction working with us so they work with the individual that's incarcerated, we work with the families, so by the time the individual comes out, that we can help him change his perspective and at the same time working on the family. You know what I'm saying? I think to really have a chance to perform some miracles, So it's getting that piece in place where we can begin to do that. And what I'm saying to the church is that our outreach ministry needs to address that. Because like it or not, when they come out of the House of Correction, they don't move back to the cities. They're staying here. Because in one way they like what this community is, but at the same time they're remaining part of the problem. But they're going to be here. And if you don't plan them in, then they're going to be out. And they're going to continue to the same kind of behavior they had before, because that's all they know. And the other thing is, if you listen to the newspapers and the articles, they romanticize the whole drug dealing thing. You know what I'm saying? They talk about all these kids are making so much money. You follow what's happening. 99% of all these kids that they claim are coming in and making all this money, they are worse off now than they've ever been. The money that they claim they have made, that money isn't theirs. None of it's theirs. So they're often in the worse shape than ever. But we keep romanticizing. Oh, well, kids, they walk away, they can make so much money. None of it. That money flows right through to them, to the dealers at the other level. It's not theirs, But they end up becoming drug addicted themselves. They're having, the number of single-parent families, the number of children that are being born through this relationship, the number of things that are just being lost. Single girls, who may have had a Section 8, and now that's one of these young men moving with them. And as soon as they're caught selling drugs, that individual is just thrown out. That mother and that child is kicked out of that housing and no longer eligible. So they return to the community. So a lot of things, the mushrooming effect that's going on right now. And it's now looking at what kinds of things can we do. And what I'm saying to the church is that you got to be on the cutting edge. We got to be on the cutting edge, because if we're not there, nobody's going to be there. No, and they will make more jails. And they will move them into jails. And as far as any really rehabilitation being done there, there's very little being done there. And when they come back out, they're faced with exactly the same thing. They're not coming out with additional skills. When they're coming out with some additional attitude. They become a little more hardened as far as criminals are concerned. But they're coming back out, and now they're ours. They belong to us.
It's 12 o'clock.